right, welcome to Talking Investing. I am Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to do our weekly Bitcoin and Bitcoin miner update. We're going to go through all of our regular weekly charts. This was a good week for Bitcoin. This was a very good week for some of the Bitcoin miners. We're going to go through that in detail. We're going to look at the week. We're going to look at a 6-week period, a 19-week period, and we're also going to take a look at year to date. And then I want to discuss a few other things. I want to talk about some price points for Bitcoin, and I want to talk about what I think is going to happen to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners in the month of December. We got a lot to go through. If you're new to the channel, please remember to smash the like button. We're going for 500 likes. Also, if you have not yet, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this content, and you can hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. With that said, let's take a look at what happened to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners this week. Okay, we're going to start on the week-over-week comparison. Now, you're going to see there was some very big moves to the upside, but as I've been talking about for many months now, there's starting to be some winners and losers. So you're going to see, although we have some massive green candles, there were actually 4 Bitcoin miners that were in the red this week. The first thing is, as always, in gold, you're going to see Bitcoin. Bitcoin was up 3%. So this was another very solid week. The NASDAQ is in purple. That was up 1%. We've included the NASDAQ on this chart because for quite some time, the Bitcoin miners seem to be following the equity markets more so than Bitcoin. I think that's changing. We've been talking about that trend over the last several weeks. So here, this week is probably one of the best weeks that we've had really in the last 4 or 5 months. You're going to see the vast majority of the Bitcoin miners were in the green, and the vast majority of the Bitcoin miners outperformed Bitcoin. All the Bitcoin miners are still in the red over the last 19 weeks. We're going to get to that later. So, some of these big moves on a weekly basis are just catching up for lost time. Okay, so Cleanspark was up 42% this week. They were the big winner on the week. We have been talking about Cleanspark on this channel quite a bit. It is my personal #1 conviction play out of all the Bitcoin miners. That's not financial advice. I'm not telling you to buy CleanSpark or any of these other stocks. Of course, you guys need to do your own due diligence, but I do always let you know what my thoughts are and what I'm doing. But there were other big winners. Iris Energy was up 25%. So, these are gigantic leverage plays this week. Riot and Marathon, which are the largest by market cap by far, were both up 15 and 14% respectively. So those were big moves to the upside, even for the very large market cap stocks. And you're going to see a lot of others in the green. Down at the other side, there were several stocks that did underperform. So let's talk about the ones that were in the red. Hive Blockchain was down 2%. So no particular reason that I know of there. Bitfarms was down 9%. So Bitfarms was in the red. This is not typical. Bitfarms did do a private offering at a slight discount. This entire 9% move was all on the day that they announced that. So I think you're going to see that was the reason for Bitfarms' move to the downside. Any was down 14%. Any has struggled. As we get to charts later on, you're going to see this is a continuation of their struggles really all year this year. And Core Scientific was down 22%. They also put out a press release giving a little clarity as to what's going to go on as they come out of Chapter 11. And I think the stock made a bit of an adjustment based on that. So we'll see what happens, but not a good week for Core Scientific. That was the worst performer on the week, down 22%. Okay, so here's the performance of Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners over the last 6 weeks. I'm measuring this 6-week window because basically this is the 6 weeks that Bitcoin really took off. Right in the middle of October through now, Bitcoin has been on a run. So you're going to see, as always, in gold, Bitcoin is here up 41% in 6 weeks. It's up well over 100% year to date. We'll get to that chart later. So this was a gigantic move to the upside. We're starting to see some of the Bitcoin miners catch up. Last week, there was only one Bitcoin miner out of all the miners that had outperformed Bitcoin. This week, you can see now there are 3. I mentioned last week that I think more and more of the Bitcoin miners are going to pass Bitcoin on this list. In other words, they're going to start to behave like the leveraged play that they're supposed to be as Bitcoin is moving up inside of a bull run. Okay, so CleanSpark leaped all the way to the top of this list. Over the last 6 weeks, it's up 59%. 42% of that was this week. DMG's up 56%. That's a nano cap stock, so those tend to be more volatile. But here we have Marathon. They are now just a little bit ahead of Riot, but in a virtual tie for the largest market cap out of all the Bitcoin miners. And Marathon is now outperforming Bitcoin in this 6-week window of time. So that's a big move. I think it's important that we start to see the larger market caps, the larger Bitcoin miners start to become leveraged plays on Bitcoin. So I do think we're starting to see that. And you're going to see Marathon recently has outperformed Riot, which is up 31% in the same period of time. So in doing so, it's caught all the way up in market cap. And like I said, they're virtually the same. Most of the Bitcoin miners over the last 6 weeks are in the green, but you can see a bunch of these between 12 and 16%. So really, these are still underperforming Bitcoin significantly. So I do think that several of these will start to make their move and pass Bitcoin between now and the end of the year, which is really just about 5 weeks away at this point. So that's not financial advice. That's my personal opinion. I'm letting you guys know what I think I'm seeing here. So you guys can drop in the comments. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think this run is going to continue? Are we going to have a green December? And I'm going to talk more about that later in the video. Okay, so once again, even in this 6-week window, you're going to see 4 of these miners are in the red. There's a list of 6 here that I think are drastically underperforming, and then maybe another 6 here in the middle that really have some catching up to do. We're going to see what the market thinks of these stocks over the course of the next 5 weeks between now and the end of the year. Okay, now here we go. This is the last 19 weeks. Bitcoin is now 25% above its previous high for the year, which was back in the middle of July. In that same period of time, the NASDAQ is up 1%, so basically flat. So one of the things we've talked about is Bitcoin is having its bull run irrespective of what the equity markets are doing at this point. Even with the last 6 weeks being green for almost all the Bitcoin miners, in the last 19 weeks from the previous high to the current high, every single Bitcoin miner is still in the red, is still down in that period of time. So Cleanspark with this gigantic move this week is now in the lead, but they're still down 19% in the same period of time that Bitcoin is up 25%. The market is starting to be concerned about a few of these stocks. These bottom 4 in particular, I think the market is very worried about. So that doesn't mean the market is right. Remember, the market is not always right, and stocks don't always act rationally. So you guys got to decide for yourself. There may be some buying opportunities in here. That is my point in showing you these charts, to point out any potential opportunities that are worth looking into, worth adding to your watch list, etc. Okay, now I want to do year to date. So this helps put things in perspective. If you look year to date, all but 3 of these stocks are in the green. So we're getting very close to the end of the year. So this chart is starting to be much more meaningful, right? We have just a little over 1 month left in the year, and you can see that the Bitcoin miners, when it's all said and done with, despite a lot of frustrations, most of these stocks had a very good year. But like we've been talking about for probably at least 6 months now on this channel, there are going to be winners and losers in this space. Not every Bitcoin miner is going to make it after the halving. And I think there's a 6 to 12 month window after the halving where I think at least 5 of these companies probably aren't going to make it. Some of them may get bought out by larger companies. Some of them may just go under. Some of these companies are in a big hole, and it's going to be very hard for them to get out. Conversely, some of these companies have set themselves up very well for the halving, and I think there's a lot of room left to the upside if Bitcoin can have its normal 4-year cycle where it hits a new all-time high and beyond sometime over the next 12 to 18 months. Okay, I want to quickly take a look at the Bitcoin chart, and then I want to talk about December because something very specific happened last December, and I want to talk about what I think this December is going to look like. Okay, first quickly to look at the Bitcoin chart. This is the daily chart. So a couple of lines here. You're going to see a purple line that I have here at $37,885. That line represents the highest daily candle close of the year. That happened on November 15th. So even though the last 3 or 4 days we've had very good price action on Bitcoin, we have not been able to take out that daily candle close yet. So to me, that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking for. If we're to have the next leg up, the first thing we need to do is take out this and have a higher daily candle close. The next thing is you'll see on Friday, we did run up to a new high for the year for Bitcoin for 2023. So we candle wicked up, although we did not close there at the end of the day, we did get up to $38,454. So that was several $100s higher than our previous high for the year. In fact, the last run up was to $37,999. So this was the first day of 2023 that we broke $38,000. So that was a very important barrier. Somewhere around this $37,800 mark, just under $38,000, has represented some short-term resistance. So I do think it's important that we get past this, not just on a candle wick, but on a daily close. lows. And if we could put a couple of those together, I think the next leg is up for Bitcoin. I'm looking for Bitcoin to break through these two numbers and run up to maybe 42,000 between now and the end of the year. I think if everything stays as it is, it looks like Bitcoin is set to continue to run. We were expecting a pullback for Bitcoin. It was set up basically, we've had 320+% pullbacks on Bitcoin in the year 2023, even though it's been a very bullish year all year long. So those corrections are very normal. I would not be shocked to see if we did have a pullback, even if we do end up running to 42,000 between now and the end of the year. It would be about a 10% pullback from here to get to the purple line that I created about a month ago. So I think that would be a pretty natural pullback for Bitcoin. I'm not sure this is going to happen. It looks to me like we've actually moved on from this, but I do think it's fair to say it's still on the table that we could have a small pullback. But I do think we avoided the 20% pullback that we've been getting previously throughout this bull run. So lastly, I want to take just a quick look at December. This is Bitcoin's performance by month, by year. So if you look at last year, in December, Bitcoin was down 3.59%. So a very small move to the downside last December. At the same time, the Bitcoin miners got absolutely decimated last December. I'm going to run through some snapshots of some charts that I took real quickly just to show you. Marathon, which was the largest by market cap, was down over 56% from December 5th to December 28th. Most of the Bitcoin miners hit their low for the year, many of which was their all-time low on or around December 28th, 2022. So Marathon down 56%. If I go to Riot, they were down 36% in that same period of time. If I look at Cypher, they were down 62% in that same window of time. Bitfarms did a little better, but still down 36% in that same window of time. And remember, Bitcoin was only down 3.5% for the month of December. So these moves are 10 or 15 times that to the downside. All of the Bitcoin mining stocks were down somewhere between 35 and 65%. Essentially in this 3.5 week window of time. The one exception to that of the major Bitcoin miners is Cleanspark was down 25%. So that was actually the best performing stock in that period of time. But even it was down 25%. So December was a nightmare last year. I think the exact opposite is going to happen this year. I want to talk about the reason why I think that happened. Why was there such a discrepancy between Bitcoin's performance and the Bitcoin miners' performance last December? I think the answer is simple. Tax loss harvesting. These Bitcoin mining companies being down so drastically all year in the year 2022 were primed for tax loss harvesting. And you can see that clearly happened because they so drastically underperformed Bitcoin in just about a 3.5 week window of time. And that was that tax loss harvesting window of time. Now we know that in January, that basically reversed itself, which can often happen. But this year, the exact opposite is true. And I'm just going to end back on this chart. This is the performance of these Bitcoin miners year to date this year. So almost all of these are in the green. Most of these are up 100 or 200 or 300%. So these are not targets for tax loss harvesting. Quite the opposite. The last thing people are going to want to do is sell their Marathon or Riot up 250%. So I think you're not going to see any of that effect. I think you're going to continue to see the Bitcoin miners outperform Bitcoin between now and the end of the year, particularly in the month of December. So while December 2022 was a nightmare, I think the opposite is going to be the case this December. Again, only time will tell, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on that because if some of you are in fear of December based on what happened last year, I don't believe that will happen in 2023. So those are my thoughts on Bitcoin for the week, the month, the year. Please remember to drop your comments below if you have any thoughts. And also, of course, smash the like button. If you have not yet subscribed, please remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next video.